All right, board members, the discussion for public comment tonight, I'd like to make a motion to move the public comment further down in the agenda after the budget discussion. And I'll entertain any thoughts or discussion on that.
I think because the people that wanted public comment are thinking about the budget, it's a good idea to move it afterwards so they can see what we're talking about and then comment on it afterwards.
Any disagreement with moving the, okay. So I will make a motion to move public comment down further to the agenda towards the budget discussion.
Second.
Question real quick. Are we moving the budget discussion up further in the agenda, or are we keeping it where it is?
We are keeping it where it is. And you seconded? All right.
Yep.
All approved?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to Pinkerton School highlights with Ellie Henry.
Good evening. Here are Pinkerton's highlights. Freshman reception was on September 24th, which was a fun experience for the freshmen and class office. The Pinkerton players are hard at work rehearsing for their fall play, which is Sleepy Hollow. And the show is on October 17th, 18th, and 19th, so if you guys can, you should go. There is a safety night on the topics of vaping, host laws, and more on October 23rd in the Stockbridge Theater at 6 p.m. Over 100 college reps have signed up for fall visits, and the seniors are taking advantage of that. And lastly, the school phone ban is still being implemented and followed by the students and staff, which is continuing to go well. That's all for tonight. Thank you.
Board members, any questions for Ellie or comments? Thank you for the update. Moving on to the new strategic plan development with Bob Thompson. Oh, nope, I'm out of order. Letter A is an Academy presentation with Dr. Powers. Sorry.
Thank you for having the opportunity to come to share some of the things. Kelly did a great job of sharing some lights that are going on campus. And if you're able to go to the play this coming weekend, I highly advise it. They've been hard at work, and the Stockbridge Theater is being redesigned by our students for it. So it's a really exciting opportunity and time. I know I've got a lot of stuff that I'm going to talk about, and feel free to ask any questions at the end with any of it, but I'll cover it as quickly as possible, knowing the time that we have here tonight. But on the next slide, was just reiterating our strategic plan. We shared about it a little over a year ago. We updated our mission and vision as we spent the year going through all that, and we developed three big goals: developing resilient learners, enhancing our systems of support sustainability, and ensuring all students graduate with a plan. All the work that we're doing ties into that strategic plan. So when we look at whether it's a new initiative or work that we're doing, we want to make sure that it focuses in and really hits at least one of those three goals as we continue to move forward. Obviously, one of the biggest things that we have is our courses and our academics and what it is that we offer. So if you click on that live link, I don't know if this is shared virtually or electronically with people if they can click on it, that takes us right to the website. And our course catalog, which has class descriptions on there as well. Our course catalog can be intimidating. There's a lot of courses on there, but as you go through it, there's a lot of information within it. There's also, if you look down the second one, a drop-down filterable version of the catalog. When you go in there, you can select courses based on what it is that you're looking to study, or if you have a particular interest, or if you're looking to ensure that you're meeting graduate requirements. Whether it's a concurrent credit, it meets the digital literacy requirements. If you can specifically look at NCAA, it's math-related courses, so every student has to be enrolled in a math-related course every year. So once they've hit the math requirements for graduation, typically their senior year, they still have to be enrolled in a math-related course. It doesn't mean that they have to, even though being a former teacher, it breaks my heart that students don't love math classes as much as I think could. But they can enroll in a related course, which could be like culinary arts too, could be electrical too, building, things along those lines. So if you're looking for something specific, you can start to narrow it down and you can see, and as you look across the right, concurrent credit, yes. So there's that eligibility for it. Does it meet the digital literacy credit requirement for graduation? There could be a yes or no. They know if that checks off that box. Math related, personal finance. Does it meet New Hampshire scholars? So as students are graduating, do they check all the boxes to be a New Hampshire scholar? That information is there for the students. So I'll talk a little bit about school counseling later, but there's a lot of information there that eighth graders, as they're starting to look at, should be looking at and thinking down the road, what is it that they want to take and learn about, so that way they can see and plan out 5 years from when they enter in. Where do they want to be in that year? Other ways to filter it as well, you can filter it by career pathways. So you can also look at it through whether you're looking at and I believe it's actually on a different tab that I can't quite see on the screen right now, but there is a way like you can reset it and you can look at it through career pathways. So if you're looking at something in the human services and education resources, if you're looking for some classes that will read agriculture, food, and natural resources, health science, arts, AV tech, communication and computer information services, if you're looking at something in the STEM fields, business marketing and management. So wherever students may want to go, there's ways that they can filter it and they can see what courses are related to those fields that they may not just think of right off the bat. On the next slide, we dive into a little bit of a couple of other departments and some specifics there. Visual art, so in arts, you need a half credit in order to graduate art, and there's a lot of options for students. So you could look at it, you have something you could take in the visual arts, so whether it's digital photography, ceramics, performing arts, if they're interested in band, wind ensemble, handbell choir, dance club, dance 1, 2, unified dance, those are classes that meet the graduation requirement in performing arts. Classroom music, so like the roots of rock and roll, music theory and composition, AP music theory, and then theater arts, intro to theater arts, musical workshop, advanced theater making. Those are all art courses that will meet the graduation requirement, and then students can take multiple art courses during their time. Some of these courses, such as Intro to Graphic Arts and Graphic Design, could also meet the digital literacy requirement. So we tell students as they're going through and checking, when you do it, you can use it for one or the other. So it can meet your art requirement or it can meet your digital literacy graduation requirement. It can't meet both. So when they're going through, they make sure that they know those pieces as well. And a lot of these classes also have club options too. So a student may love dance, they just can't fit it in their schedule, they can still be a part of the dance club. So there's opportunities for them to be able to still pursue passions that they have that maybe don't fit in their schedules. On the next side, career and technical ed, there's just not enough time to go over all the CTE offerings that we have, but there's 19 different career pathways that students can take a look and take classes, so they can work in these areas, they can learn about it. And I think there's two big things for it. One, it's all on campus, so it fits right in their day, so they don't miss time by having to get on a bus to go somewhere else to take the class. They go from one class period right to the next and they take the course. And the other part of it too is this is a great opportunity for students to try different classes and see what do they like and what do they not like, more importantly. So if they may think that they have an interest in a particular field or a particular area, if they try the course and they decide that I hate it, it's a lot easier to switch classes and do what you're trying to do in high school than it is halfway through your college career and all of a sudden decide, I don't want to be a history major, I want to go do something else. It then becomes a little bit more expensive. So with the CTE, we really try to tell students, try different things and see what it is that you have for opportunities. I mentioned earlier about the pathways. This slide here shows what the career pathways are and allows students to see within human services, what are some of the careers that fall under that. So it would be like family relationships, independent living, parenting, those are courses. And then we'll go into what are those career paths later on that they could pursue if they decide to study in that particular area. When we're talking about students and how do we meet them and support them, our school counseling has done a great job in the work that they do and really changing things up and going into more detail with students and helping them throughout their time. Their goal is to meet with a student meet with the students every year, so that they have interactions with the students every year on specific things, but then also they will meet with students as needed. So these are some of the ways that we try to make a big high school feel smaller. So in those, there's, with students, you can see each year, and I won't go through each year what all of them are, but those are the typical meetings that they'll have. For us, a student coming in, they'll have a school counselor their freshman year. Our school counselors for the freshmen go into the 8th grade to all of the middle schools, and they meet with the middle school teachers, school counselors. They meet with the students, go through the course planning process coming up December, January, February, that time frame, and then throughout the spring. And then for us, because of the amount of work that it takes in that transition piece, the student will have the counselor for their freshman year, and then they'll transition to a new counselor. Ideally, that will be the same counselor that they have their sophomore through senior year as they go through the process, and they work with the student transitioning from freshman year to sophomore year. When they're in the academy building, the freshman school counseling office is located in there, and then the upper school counseling office is in our low building. And so students typically spend a lot of their day freshman year in the academy building, and then they migrate out across campus, and their school counseling office moves as well, so that they have the opportunity there to meet with them. They do things on an individual basis, one-on-one, but then they also do in smaller groups, and then large groups as well, when they talk about, like now with seniors, doing a lot with the FAFSA, Naviance, Common App, like how to go through the process of that, because now's a big time for students in their application process there. On the next slide, we talk about like what are ways that we identify students and what supports that they may need. And in a minute, I'll talk a little bit more about some of the supports that students need there, but different ways then in which our school counseling department will work to identify it. One of the first big ones is the transition meetings with the 8th grade counselors. There they have those one-on-one conversations with the counselors, meet with them, find out what's working for the students or what are some of the struggles that they may have, what are supports that they may need. And then we repeat that again freshman year to sophomore year. So our school counselors, when they get the caseload from the freshman counselors, they'll have those meetings, they'll go over them, they'll say like, these are the things that are working or not working, this is areas where we've seen growth, or these are areas where students have still struggled, and they're going to possibly need more supports. A parent guardian, a peer student, a teacher, associate dean of students, which would essentially be like their assistant principals, any one of them can make a referral for a student to see their school counselor or to get in any kind of program. So it's not just what the school counselor sees and trying to get them in there. We really try to work with our families, parents, guardians, students. If they see a peer that's struggling, reaching out to their school counselor and just saying, hey, I know that so-and-so is going through a tough time, make that connection so that they can meet with the student and see if there is a program that is needed for them. Monitoring attendance, so if there's a change in attendance, a student comes to us and they've never missed a day of school, and halfway through their sophomore year they've never missed a day with us, and then all of a sudden they're missing days of school. Then all right, there's a change in attendance, what's going on, meeting with them, seeing what's going on there. And their school counselors, they run grade reports throughout the years, so if they see students that their grades are slipping, meet with them to find out if there's something going on in their lives that's causing that. And then also just meeting with individual students on a as regular basis as possible to see where they are with things. On the next slide, it shows a lot of our supports that we do offer. So this information is also all on our website. The easiest way to explain it, like Tier 1 is a core. Every student, all students get this level here that they can have. So it's your basic student voice and choice through the instruction, depth of knowledge and programs done through instruction, formative, interim, and summative assessments all done in the classroom. That feeds a lot of the information, and set up for a study group, helping students do that. The Flex program, I'll talk about that in a minute, for academic support, but then also all those pieces, other pieces of social, emotional learning, and mental health aspects that go on a regular basis. Tier 2 is supplemental. I mean, it's that core plus more. So on the academics, it may mean that a student needs 504 support. They may need foundation in algebra, introductory to stats or geometry, so they may need just a different level of a math class. They may need the Chalk Talk program, which would be a student that's coming back from a concussion that they've suffered, and making sure that we reintegrate them into the academics as appropriate. It could be ESOL, so if a student is coming that they're not a non-native speaker, those are programs that are there. Directed study is another one, so any student that may need some executive functioning assistance and help, that's a program where they can get recommended into where they would go, and it could be a short term, they're in there for a week, or it could be longer, where they'll get help in that executive functioning, and ideally they're going to come out of there with the skills that they need to continue to be successful throughout their high school career. And then tier 3, it's the core plus more and more. So this is when like special education comes into play, our Academy Learning community, our Pinkerton Academy Choice in Education, our PACE program, adult education, NECC is a particular special education program, and then BRIGHT program, which would be a student that's absent for a long-term illness. It could just be that they're out of school for a month because of an illness. Maybe they were hospitalized. So that program there is really designed to how do we bring them back into the academic setting in a way that allows them to be successful. For a student that's been out because they've been hospitalized for a month, jumping right back in day one and going through a full day may not be the best thing for them. So that program really helps them with that transition piece. On the next slide, look at a little bit more of the alternative pathways. So some of these are diploma paths and ways that we can work with students to make sure that they've earned a high school diploma or the equivalent of it, because not every student is going to take the same path. I think sometimes the worst thing that we can ask a student, especially a senior, is, where are you going next year? What college are you going to? College is great, it's not for every student. What are you doing next? What are your plans after high school? Having those conversations with students to know that if they choose to go into the workforce, that's great. If they choose the military, great. If they choose to go to a 2-year college, great. If they choose to go to a 4-year university, that's great as well. Each of them are going to have their own path. So when we draw that back, as we look at their time throughout high school, maybe there is a different path that they have to take. Maybe they do have to go through the adult diploma program, which allows them to take some classes during the day and then some after school in order to satisfy all those graduation requirements. Or maybe for a period of time or for a longer period of time, they need to take part in our Academy Learning community, which takes place over on Chenito Road. It's set in a house, so it's a smaller setting. It's a little bit more intimate. Students are able to work on things at their own pace, so they can get through some things quicker, or they maybe can take a little bit longer to go through things there, but they do individual work, but they also do work as a group. It's self-paced with assistance, and they can stay there, or they can transition back to the main campus for the rest of their high school education there. We also work with the Upper Room, which is directly across the street from our Chenito Road property there, where the Upper Room is, and do the HiSET program, so the GED equivalent, so we can work with students, and we'll help to get them ready to be able to take it. Then they can go over there, they can take the HiSET program, then they can satisfy their requirements through that way. And then in the alternative paths, we also look at other ways like extended learning opportunities, credit advancement, credit recovery, competency recovery. Really worked at ways to make sure that we try and keep students on track as they're working towards graduation. On the next slide is another one like support. It's like all these links go right onto our website. I talked a little bit about the Directed Study Hall. Academic Support Center, so in the Academy building, we have our Learning Commons, where we have a Math, Humanities, and Science Center that's staffed by a certified educator. So students are able to go there during their study halls, and they're able to get help in those disciplines. So it could be a math question. Math is the one that is used the most, but then science, humanities, your English and social studies, they can go there, they can ask the questions, they can get help from not only a certified teacher, but then also throughout the year. The honor societies for each of those areas will support as well, so there can be peer tutoring that occurs as well. On the Chalk Talk I mentioned briefly is just for any student returning from a concussion, so not just our student athletes that maybe got concussed participating in athletics, but also a student who went skiing over the weekend and they fell and they got a concussion there. It's also for them to be able to come back to class, back to academics as a safe way, and also make sure that it's gradual in their return to learn. And then the BRIGHT pathways I mentioned as far as the long-term illness and coming back. Flex. I think this has been one of the great things that we've introduced. We went full bore with it 4 years ago. So the Flex group that I have are seniors this year, and it's already bittersweet. They're already talking about the year end, and as excited as they are, they're talking about the time that they're missing. They're going to be missing our little Flex family and getting together there. And the neat part is, there's 12 of them, and if you took these 12 students, a couple of them would have been friends coming in before, and maybe a couple of them would have been friends because they had classes together. But watching them grow together and the range of students, where they're from, the classes they take, and how they interact, and the life things that they go through, from a first date, getting their driver's license, getting into an accident because they backed into a pole, things along that, where they talk about it, and they help each other out with it. Like there's times this year they were talking about a few things, and as freshman, sophomore year, it would have been something that I would have weighed in and helped them through. Now they're talking through it, and they're helping each other out as they're going through it. One of them's actively recruiting another one to come work with them because if she gets that to happen, she gets a $500 bonus, and they're negotiating if that's who's going to get the whole $500 or not. But the other part that's really nice about Flex is that's a typical schedule for the week, but what it really does is it allows the playing field to be leveled. We know that not every student can stay after school or get to school before school to get extra help. Traditionally, extra help has always been after school. If you wanted extra help, you had to stay, you had to find a ride for some students, or you had to make sure that your work schedule worked, or if you were participating in club or athletics, you had to be in a time when you didn't have something else going on. Now it happens during the school day. So 33 minutes every day, students can go get extra help. They can also make up like a quiz or a test or something that they've missed in class because of an absence or something along those lines. So it really allows them to be able to take advantage of that time during the school day, and the students that we know have to leave right after school because they have to go get a younger sibling off the bus, or because of family needs, they have to go to work or things along those lines. They're not missing out on these academic opportunities. So we found a lot of value there. And it also allows us to do full class assemblies and meetings and do things that we would have traditionally taken away from English period, because everyone takes a senior English. So that's where you go for when you're going to talk about the college application process. You go to senior English class and you share that information. Now we can do it during Flex, so we're not taking away from those academic subjects in that time there. In the next slide, we talk a little bit more about some support services. So this really dives into that special education. So those are the programs we have. Resource Passes, ACT, NECC Partner Program. Those are the 4 levels and types of programs. They all fit different needs. And in order to get into any of those special education programs, it's a team decision. You're represented by your LEA at the meeting, as well as the parent would be there, the student would be there. And the placement would be made based on what the needs of the student are. And they look at the yearly goals, the end goal of where the student would like to be when they complete their high school, and what that transition piece looks like. 504 is another student support. So a student may just need an extra time for a test or quiz, a quiet place to work. They may need extra support with executive functioning. So that 504 is, again, it's a team decision based on the 504 needs of the student there. And then the other part is that transition support. So any of the students that are in any of these programs at Hampstead in the middle school, and that there is that 8th grade to 9th grade transition where the teams meet. They meet with the students, the families, they go over what is currently working, what are the supports going to look like at Pinkerton, and how do we transition from 8th grade to 9th grade to work to make sure that those students are successful. Just a couple last things here. Clubs, if you look at that there's over 60 of them, and the list changes every year because we look to meet what the students' demands and the students' wants are. And we feel strongly we want students that are connected. We want them involved in something. So this list of clubs is an opportunity for students to be able to partake in an interest that they have. It's ranged from, we had a Garfield club at one point in time because we had a group of students that loved Garfield. They found a teacher that would advise them. And I think it was the 3rd or 4th Wednesday of every month, they had pasta. When the students graduated, the club ended. But that to me is like, it's in a perfect, it brought together a group of students. They had a common interest. It kept them connected. The teacher that advised it then had another set of eyes, and not only were they having conversations about Garfield, but then they were also checking in on where they were doing academically. So that was just another checkpoint with them here. So we were to tell students, get involved. Athletics, 36 varsity sports, 11 freshman teams. You can see the list. There's a sport that's offered. We offer it. We participate in it. Our teams are very successful. We always tell our students coming in, your freshman year is your best chance to make any team, try out for a team, because as a freshman you can make the freshman team, you can make the JV team, and potentially you could even make the varsity team. So there's more opportunities for you there. And continue to work at it and try. So one of the students in my Flex this year, he is a great story, and I told him, I said, I won't share your name, but I'm gonna share the story, because he came in his freshman year, he made freshman boys soccer. He tried out his sophomore year, got cut. He tried out his junior year and got cut. But he stuck with it. He's starting this year as a senior. He made the team. He loved soccer. He didn't give up on it. He worked hard at it until, like, keep at it, because maybe you don't make it one year, it doesn't mean you're done for your entire career, or maybe you go and do something else. When I was the athletic director, a student after their sophomore year got cut from basketball, they went and joined DECA, and through his involvement there, he ended up with like $40,000 in scholarship. If he made basketball, he wasn't joining DECA. Right now, I'm sure he's really happy he had $40,000 in scholarship and not the debt for that. So it worked out for him. So there's lots of different opportunities. And then on the last slide, summer camps. So these are different summer camps that we offer in CTE and Fine Arts, CTE grade 6 and up, Fine Arts grades 5 and up, opportunities for students to come onto campus to partake, to try in some of those camps, see if they like it or not. The CTE camps typically run the week, 2 weeks right after school gets out. They're short 1 week camp where they may be able to get in there, and they do some of those activities that are tied to those courses to hopefully get them energized and look at that as maybe a course that they want to take when they become a student, or it's just a great opportunity for mom or dad to drop their kid off for a week and let them learn how to do a particular skill, where there's culinary and creating charcuterie boards or something along those lines. And then athletics, they run a lot of different camps that are open up to various grades depending upon the sport. What are those opportunities, and getting students onto campus so that they're able to see the campus, they're able to partake in those opportunities and see where it goes. So I know I kind of speed rushed through it a little bit, but at a high level kind of hopefully covered a lot of opportunities that we have for students. And I don't know if there are any questions or...
It was a really impressive presentation. So.
Thank you.
For students that might have food needs and stuff like that, what do you, I know it's not quite the same with free and reduced lunch, but how is that both at school and then supporting them at home? How does that work?
Sure. So we do still, so I guess I'll just do a quick, the free and reduced lunch, we partake in that, and it's really important that any family that would potentially qualify for it, that they do the paper, we send the paperwork home and like that they do partake in it, because that benefits the Hampstead School District with funds and things like that. So we really try to push that there. If there are any students that do have any dietary restrictions, if it's a gluten allergy or nut allergy or anything like that, reach out to our service director. He's excellent with making sure, okay, this student has these kind of needs, and making sure that on the menu there are options for them so that they're able to partake in the breakfast or lunch, whatever it is that they need.
Well, for the last, I think, 8 years, and a lot changed, and I'm very impressed with where things are now.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
On your website or anywhere else, do you have data around graduation rates or anything like that?
Have data, yes. Is it on our website? I don't know off the top of my head. It's on our website, but we do have that data. And so the data with the state is it's misleading, because they won't, the way they look at it, they view it is that cohort, so the current freshman class, they start the clock when they enter high school and say they got to graduate within 4 years. If they don't graduate within 4 years, it doesn't, and then they'll have the 5th year graduation rate, and then after that, it doesn't count towards graduation. So I believe last year, I think our graduation rate was between 80–90%, somewhere in that range. But for the 4 year, but then when you start to include 5th year, or you start to include some of the alternative pathways, it gets higher and higher. What I would say is look at our dropout rate, which I think our dropout rate was about 0.5%. And those are the kids that they don't make it. They just, by the time they turned 18, they made a decision that school was not for them. They dropped out. And to me, those are the ones that we were not successful with getting them to earn a high school degree or equivalent of it there.
And just out of curiosity, I'd be curious to see, since Pinkerton has several sending districts, obviously, graduation rates across those. And Bob, I don't know if that's something that we could get, because I'd be curious about Hempstead students versus Derry versus Chester and other sending towns.
Yeah, there is, as Dr. Powers mentioned, some data that the state maintains. And then again, there's that graduation rate, dropout rate, and then the other one that is an important data piece, which can be tricky at times to calculate completion. And that is the idea of, we send X number of students in a year to Hampstead. How many of them actually complete at Pinkerton within a 4-year window? Now, we know that's not in the cards for everybody, but understanding that data helps us make some of our improvements on our ends. Because we do have families, especially now with education accounts, that are seeking sort of alternatives. And it's not just true here in Hampstead, it's true across the state of New Hampshire. We see an increase in who's looking to homeschool their students or attend a private school, parochial school, or even a charter school. So definitely want to continue to look at that data around completion rates.
Yeah, and to your point too, like some of those special education programs, like particularly the NECC and the ACT programs, those students are with us until they turn 22. They don't graduate within 4 years. So as soon as they come in, they automatically are counted against that 100% piece, which I don't think is, those students are there, and we work to educate them and help them transition. They're not a data point, and I don't think they should be viewed that way. But right off the bat, they won't count. They'll count against the graduation for any school or any district.
And I would like to commend Pinkerton, the slide of sort of the array of alternative programming. I think, you've heard me say before that, Pinkerton, when you look at course offerings, offers more courses than any high school that I know of. In high school, arguably the country. And if you look at some of the programs that they have in place for students who might need that alternative path, the options are there. What I think as a school district we need to look is how are we supporting those students around issues as tutoring or transportation, because some of these programs are running after school, they're running at different times throughout the day, and that may or may not work for our busing schedule. And so transportation can be a little bit of a barrier, and I think that's something, and I'm saying this being a plug because we're going to move in to talk about budget later on, and this is an area where I think we could leverage some dollars to help support some students in accessing the programs that Pinkerton has to offer.
I'll echo Bob's statement on, I'm just blown away when anyone takes a look at that course catalog, just the breadth. It's anything you can dream of is a course. It's amazing.
Thank you. It is. It's really neat to go across campus and see them in action. And
Piggybacking off of the bus thing, CART is available, and obviously a bus at Pinkerton is way better, but just an alternative for people.
I looked it up. The state average for dropout is 2.6 and Pinkerton is 0.6, so 2% higher.
Thank you.
It was great, or lower. But
Lower, yeah.
It was awesome.
in the right direction.
Yes, correct.
All right. Any other questions or comments for Dr. Powers? Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Have a great rest of the night.
All right, moving on to our new strategic plan development with Bob Thompson.
All right, I'll just project. There's a document in your packet entitled Hampstead School District Strategic Plan Process. Just 1 minute, we'll project the document for folks in the audience. Okay, so at the conclusion of the 24-25 school year, we concluded our 3-year strategic plan. And so this year, we are hitting the pause button on the strategic plan, what I would call sort of a year of self-study and reflection. And that gives us the opportunity to write a new plan. And so what I've done, you find in your packet and displayed here, is sort of the process that I am planning to use. My goal in sharing this tonight is to get some feedback from the board. I will refine this process, and we will be on the journey of creating a new guiding document for the school district. And so, the purpose of the planning committee is to develop a guiding document that articulates the school's values, establishes some priorities for the future work. This plan is designed to guide decision-making, resource allocation, U.S. improvement, align with the district and for success. So the previous plan, we created the document. It was a 3-year document, articulated our values, our priorities, and then also some specific action items. And then every fall we would come aboard with some action items that were in support of those priorities and values. And throughout the year we would look to hit the mark on them. We'd report out in January and then in June as to the success. And I'll be honest, there are some things that we nailed it and we did it well. And then there were a number of items. If you go through the original document, you'll see there are things that we did not do. And that really is because our priorities change. Funding changes, the availability of grants and other resources. And so it's important that whatever process we move forward with and whatever document we move forward with, it has some flexibility in it, just knowing that our needs are constantly changing. And so the foundation of this work is the steering committee. And what I am looking to do is assemble 11 members. Would be a facilitator. This would be an outside person. This is a very important job because this strategic plan belongs to the school community. It is not, no offense, it's not the board's strategic plan. It's not the superintendent's strategic plan. So bringing in a facilitator really helps to give voice to all of the participants. As is to one of the stakeholder groups. And so we have identified a facilitator that we have begun working with. They will help to run meetings. They will help to provide technical assistance around advisory groups. We'll have focus groups. We'll do feedback surveys. They'll help to let information and then help to articulate some of those results. In addition to the facilitator, you have the superintendent who will serve on the committee. I am going to be soliciting the board's input for a school board member as a stakeholder, a district administrator, building administrator, parent, community member, an elementary educator, and I use the word educator sort of broadly. Someone that could represent, doesn't necessarily have to be a classroom teacher. And generally what I'll do is I'll put out to all of the teaching staff, all staff, to solicit people that want to be on the steering committee and then sort of work with the building principal. One of the factors in determining the committee, honestly, is when people can actually meet, because there's a lot of people here and people's time is valuable. So a middle school educator, a student services member, and again, that is kind of loosely defined. That could be a special educator, it could be a related service provider, it could be counseling, nursing, any of the things that fall under that student service umbrella. And then a supports member, again, a broad category of individuals. And so it starts with that group, because that group is going to help guide the rest of this work, because the rest of these items are not tightly defined at the beginning of the process. They can be defined by the group. So the first step would be for us to, we hold an organizational meeting, pick our dates for future meetings, review and evaluate the previous strategic plan, what worked, what didn't work. This will also be part of some of the feedback that we solicit from the community as a whole, but it's good to start with that committee and just kind of evaluating the previous plan. Then from there, and again, these are spread out over several months. We'd be looking to sort of wrap this process up in February or March. We'll solicit community feedback through focus groups and surveys. We'll identify and affirm district core values. So we have core values, and we want to ask our community, have a real stark look in the mirror at ourselves. This is what we say we believe. Do we really believe it? Where's the evidence that this is consistently in our practice, particularly in our decision making? And that offers us the opportunity to make some adjustments or change some of our values, or ensure that the plan that we have moving forward puts those values front and center. Establish district priorities that correspond with action items. Again, if you looked at Dr. Power's presentation, you would see that they call them 3 goals. You can call them goals, you can call them priorities. Last time our strategic plan had 5. They were essentially focused on teaching, learning, communication, well-being, and then the physical environment. Some of the feedback that we've received from folks has been 5's a lot. So, look at sort of the range of 3 to 5. Again, this is something a steering committee would take a close look at. And then what we would do is we would draft and finalize a new strategic plan. We would bring a real solid draft here to the board for feedback. And then we would look to have the board affirm that. If you turn the document over, you scroll down, you'll see that we would like to do that in February of 2026. This follows a similar timeline to what we did last year. I like February because after February, we get into election season, and then we're seating a new board. And I think that the creation of this plan really becomes sort of the legacy of this board. You'll be along for the journey. You'll have a stakeholder from this group that will be part. They'll come back and report back to you. There'll be other entry points for the board to participate. But I would like to bring a final plan here before we look to have a new board in, not look to have a new one, but we may have a new board when we reseat them in March. So with that, I'll entertain any questions, any feedback regarding what I am proposing.
Are you using the same facilitator as last time? Or?
No, we are not. We're using someone different. The person, Joe Miller from Think Strategy, was not available. So we're using a consultant who previously worked for Great Schools Partnership out of Maine. And anyone who knows anything about consulting, like Great Schools is like the gold standard. He's formally with them, but comes with him a lot of training around facilitation and protocols, and is somebody who I think can kind of fairly lead the process, or I won't say lead, that's not the right word, facilitate the process.
Are you going to be a part of the process from the beginning, or are you going to come in later on after they've had to?
I'm going to be part of the process from the beginning.
Okay. I did it last time, and I highly encourage other board members to be a part of it this time.
And so generally, we haven't picked dates because what we like to see is when I put out a call for participants, try to see what dates what day of the week are you generally available, so that we can try to pick something that captures the largest possible group of people. And we met last year from 3 to 5. I want to move it up a little bit, maybe 3:15, just because it's such a time. That's when people it's like the rush for school getting out. So we're looking at like 3:15 to 5. We haven't determined a date yet. I can tell you from being part of these, generally Fridays and Mondays are usually not that people pick. They usually are Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Wednesday is also a tough day because there's a lot of professional commitments for our staff in the building. So I put that out there. If there's a board member that's interested, if there's one, we can flip a coin. We can look at the availability of the dates before we finalize the member. I throw it out there to the board.
Anybody feeling really excited right off the bat? We'll let people ponder on it a little bit.
Yeah, I definitely don't need it today. And I can, the other piece I can do too is when I do put out the call to staff and get a sense of the date.
Yep.
The days of the week that might work, maybe we can get somebody to do it. It is important to have a consistent member.
I
I
know.
can tell you, it's tough having 11 people total. It's tough. These are sort of our stakeholder. This is our stakeholder group. It represents pretty much everyone in the building. 11 is a lot of people. It generally accepted that 6 people makes a good committee. Every person you add after that loses some of its efficiency.
I know in principle and in theory, the budget planning that we do should align with the strategic plan. Have we considered ways of either educating the public or trying to better align our budget numbers to the strategic plan in a way of like quantifying, like if we set this goal, what can we do from a budget perspective to achieve that goal in the 3 or 5 years that the strategic plan is in place?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And this is like sort of that limbo year, in terms of trying to allocate resources for a plan that we don't know what the plan is. What I say is that, we don't always reallocate resources. We do it all the time, right? We hired a reading specialist by taking money out of contracted services. So there's that component. So this is a year we're a little bit in a limbo. The other thing too, that the critical feedback that we received is that, yes, we come here 3 times a year. We have these actionable steps. They are worked on. But looking at more of our work, the lens of strategic plan, like having those words be part of all of our meetings, our guiding documents, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done there. And I'll give you an example. I know that there's, in talking with our consultant, there are some school boards that will organize their agenda items around the priorities of the strategic plan to ensure that the work of the board is driven by the strategic plan. And that's something I'd like to explore, at least at the administrative level. Like, more of the people who are doing the day-to-day work need to know more about our strategic plan. They need to have a better ability to articulate and understand our values. I think we could have done a better job.
And I would also say from the perspective of trying to make sure we stay on track with what our core values are. You mentioned, there were goals that were set that fell apart or priorities changed, but how can we measure the progress of these things that we say we do? MTSS, for example, if we make that a priority in the strategic plan, do we have data to back up every aspect of every initiative that we're doing to measure the effectiveness or not?
Yeah, I would agree, and I think that lends itself to doing a better job of surveying, well, not just staff, but all of our stakeholders, and we've had this conversation, and again, if we're doing a survey, to ask questions framed in the language of the strategic plan and do that more often.
Mm-hmm. Board members, any other questions or discussion for Bob? Okay, so again, think about whether you might be interested in joining the committee, and either myself or Bob will likely reach out shortly to see where we all stand.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to the 26-27 preliminary budget discussion.
All right, so we are well underway with our budget. I want to thank all of our staff members. Starting school in late August and then having a department budget or a classroom budget due 3 weeks into the start of school is a real challenge. And so I appreciate the effort that all of our teachers, staff, and our administrators put into developing it. So where we stand in terms of our timeline, the school and department budgets have been submitted to Jeff and I. We've had the opportunity to meet with all of our directors and we asked lots of really tough questions. We asked for additional information. We asked for them to refine numbers, and all of this is in the lead up to our budget workshop, which will be here next Tuesday at 7 p.m. This is an opportunity for the board to ask questions about each department budget. And this is really, really drilling down into things like the health office and how many Band-Aids we're buying, and how much Benadryl are we buying, or how many tennis balls are we buying in PE. All of the information is there. And you'll hear me say this again throughout the process. This is a very, very challenging budget year. First of all, we are operating off of a default budget. So we're operating off of about $700,000 less than what we needed to operate for this current school year. That presents a pretty significant challenge. We also continue to see increased fixed costs, and Mr. Dowd will talk about that in a minute. That's things like our obligations under the collective bargaining agreements that are approved. We have to pay for that, whether we like it or not. Also, health insurance, and there's been a lot of news stories in New Hampshire about school districts who are having a difficult time with their budgets because of health insurance. And we've done a good job managing it, but it's very expensive. We also have continue to see increased costs in special education. And a little bit of a spoiler alert, just met with Director McDonald today to go over the special education budget for about the 10th time. And I think she's done such an amazing job of actually managing that department and drilling in that you are likely to see a special education budget that is level funded because of her ability to be efficient with the management of the resources. I'm pretty excited about that. And then the other thing that looms over us is just the uncertainty of federal. The budget that we'll put forward operates off of an assumption that Title II, which is money that's used to support teachers with their professional learning, that will weigh. And so we'll build in additional funds for professional learning and for teacher mentoring, and also for Title IV, which is for student programs. And just a real quick, because this is the preliminary discussion, just to go through some of the departments real quick. So curriculum, the focus this year is on social studies. Social studies, the curriculum review process is similar to science, where when we reviewed science, was a lot of homegrown teacher, professional learning, teachers developing resources. Our social studies teachers have said they are not interested in a new textbook purchase because they would like to be able to develop their own units. So we bought the math program last year, which was a very big investment. So I think overall in curriculum, you're going to see a drop. Technology, we're going to continue to prioritize cybersecurity, our Chromebook replacement cycle for students to ensure that all students, we're one-to-one and all students have a device, that we are not allowed to have students bring their own devices to school. And then also it's somewhat of a maintenance year with technology because there's no major new or replacement items that are outside of the replace cycle. Student services, again, I think Melissa's done a fantastic job. We're going to continue to see increases in student transportation. We're going to see a slight decrease as of right now in contracted services. Remember, we did make a move where we took money from contracted services to put it into a reading specialist position, and that is paying dividends both instructionally and on the budget saving side as well. And then we're also seeing a slight decrease in out-of-district placements. Again, this is due to many students who are actually graduating out. They age out, they turn 22. Maintenance, Director Mackey was here, went through that budget. The big one is the septic here at the middle school. The kitchen wall at the central school, which he talked a little bit about. That was kind of a newer item to pop up, but that's something that, given its age and condition, is something we want to address sooner than later. At HCS, there's a number of items in there for replacement furniture. This has been a priority to get flexible, to get newer furniture. It's old, it's outdated. We're also looking to implement a summer literacy program, students who may struggle in literacy based upon data points such as READY. This is sort of bringing back Summer Learning Academy, but in a very different way. And I don't want to spoil it, but when Dr. Cheney's ready to roll this out, I think the board is going to be very happy. This is making a financial investment in our MTSSA to support our literacy program. The middle school, the therapy dog program has just caught fire. That's thanks in part to our counselors. One is sitting in the audience this evening. Again, that's sort of a homegrown program, but that costs money. We want to make sure that our therapy dogs are insured. We want to make sure that they're cared for, they have the space that they need. And if we are saying that that is a priority of the district, then we need to put our money where our mouth is. You're going to see the state come back. There are some possible creative funding solutions around the stage, so Amy will be excited to talk about that. And then as Amy has done such a great job with Club Day, you will see some increases in the number of extracurricular activities and stipends for teachers. It's money for what I would call at-risk prevention, right? Getting kids engaged, keeping kids engaged in school. Staffing, as of right now, the proposal that we have would be what we had last year, which was to bring the Hampstead Central School Special Ed Coordinator into the regular operating budget. are still sitting in that IDEA grant. You can't keep them there forever. And we're also nervous that IDEA funding, big question mark with it. So it'd be prudent for the district to have that get into the opera budget. There are a number of items, I won't share all of them because we have all budget season, that are still a question mark, and I'd be interested in the board's thoughts either tonight at the budget meeting or in the future. Again, the Hampstead Central would like to add a math specialist. They do not have a math specialist. The middle school has a math specialist. This is an item, and it comes up every year. We have put it on the back burner, so for consideration. Also, the van. We talked last year about a van that we would use for both special education. We'd use it for athletics. We could use it for some possible programming at Pinkerton. So that's an item right now. I don't have that in the budget, but I definitely would want some input from the board on that. And if we didn't go with the van, what I would like to do is make some type of, and I would want the board's input on this, investment in transportation for students at Pinkerton. These are non-identified or not necessarily identified, for them to be able to access the variety of programs that right now they're not able to because transportation is an issue. That's like a general overview. Before I take questions, I think what I'd like to do is turn it over to Jeff, who's going to provide some of the data on health insurance rates and also some of our revenue.
Sure.
Excellent. So we have some items in the budget this year that have been voted on previously. We have about $399,000 for our HEA professional staff contract that was previously approved by our voters, $64,000 for our HESPA staff, our support staff, custodians, food service. And our health insurance has come in this year at between 7.5% and 10%, which seems like a lot, but it doesn't seem like a lot when we consider what other plans are being faced with. And I'm going to diverge here just a moment, because I know we had a very concerned citizen, or a few concerned citizens who are here tonight asking questions about what is going on in other districts and how is health insurance becoming such a problem in those districts. And so we have a couple things going on, and I'll try and make this as brief as I can. We received information that Auburn, one of our neighboring towns, or nearly neighboring towns, had been over budget due to special education and student services overruns. That's something that we budget responsibly for at the beginning of the year. We do understand that we do have situations that we know of that may come up that need to be funded. We fund those responsibly through the budget to make sure that we never run into a situation where we're not able to provide those services, or we have to do a call back to our taxpayers for a special assistance. What has happened with insurance, and that's the driver behind Concord. Concord is a city, and so they're, and I'm afraid that there we go. We're the company called Health Trust, and we've been with them for some time. They're a nonprofit risk pool. We go through a traditional Anthem or traditional agency. There's a lot of profit built into that. We pay for medical claims as they are incurred. So we get a bill for the actual claims. We don't have to speculate with outside companies. This has proven to be pretty efficient, pretty effective. The problem is that there are a couple other risk providers out there, and one of them is named School Care, and there has been some noteworthy assessments from School Care, and I believe Concord might be in the $2 million range. I understand Chester might be in the $200 range. Londonderry is potentially at a couple million or $1.5 million as well for this assessment. And these assessments come out, and the plans themselves do not have adequate reserves. We're with Health Trust. Trust has had adequate reserves up into the $100 million range is what their goal is. Over that, actually. They've had a couple bad years, I'll say, after COVID, where they ran through their reserves, and it made us a little bit nervous. But again, their reserves were sufficient to cover that rough period for a couple of years. So they've been able to, that storm, their reserves were much higher, I think, at the outset than School Care. They're on a plan to rebuild their reserves, and they're at, I believe, about 43 million right now, and 5% of our plan premiums go to restoring their capital reserves, so that when they do have a year where there are a substantial number of claims that are unanticipated, they have the wherewithal to be able to provide it without turning around and sending a bill to members. The school care plan is what they call an accessible plan, which means that when they have a need for more capital, they just go out to their members and assess it. Health Trust is a non-assessable plan. There's some debate about that right now, but they're a non-assessable plan. In the 40 years that they've been in operation, they've never assessed or sent an assessment out to any of their member districts. So some years we've had very high increases in insurance rates. I believe only a few years ago we were at about 22%. So these rate changes can be very difficult, I think, when it happens, financially impactful, let's say, but they do tend to provide more solvency for the risk pools, and it allows us what we need on the quasi-municipal side. We need consistency. We need very fair, efficient pricing, and we need consistency. So we really wouldn't have a need to worry about getting the $2 million assessment that Concord got, or the $2,000 assessment that Chester received. We just are not with the same company, and that's a big hit. That's a big hit for some districts. Concord, they've been most recently in the news, and they're in a different situation because they're in a city type of finance structure, so they have the same type of structure that we do. From a budgetary perspective, from a solvency perspective, we do a lot on the front end to try and make sure that our budgets are set up correctly, set up responsibly. We don't like to spend any money if we don't have to. We do understand that we do need to meet our ongoing legal obligations, and so we treat that very, very cautiously and conservatively in the budget numbers that we present. Budgets do tend to go up. We have a number of factors driving that, but as far as the solvency of the district, and you're hearing about from other districts, you're not going to hear that here. Again, Auburn was, I feel like, more than halfway through the year when they realized that their education budget of $500,000 was overrun by $500,000 or something to that effect. It was quite a gap. We look at and compare our budget to actuals frequently. The board approves every disbursement that leaves for payroll or accounts payable. I review and approve every disbursement just about that goes out. We do keep an eye on a lot of the tricky areas, and one of the tricky areas that got Auburn in trouble is that if you have a placement for an outside, if you have an outside placement with, let's just say Birch's as an outside placement school, if you have one student going there, you might set up a purchase order which encumbers the funds for $100,000. If you end up sending a second student there, well, we already have a purchase order for Birch's. So why do we need another one? Well, we need the other one because we get halfway through the year, we've now spent and depleted the entire purchase order. Those are the things the traps that can happen to districts if they're not really paying attention and have their eye on the ball. Our student services group is excellent and provides a tremendous amount of support on the business end to make sure that we know and that we're aware of any new placements that are going out, and that we can have our funds encumbered so that we have a good idea as to what our financial picture is going to look like throughout the year. So we haven't spent it yet, but it's encumbered, it's tied up, the budget's not going to pay anyone else. And that's one of the things that we've been able to tighten up quite a bit locally. So I'm not just saying I'm pleased with the internal controls that we have. I'm pleased that we're able to put forward a budget that really reflects the reality of what the needs of the school district are in order to get us to comply with the law. And on the other end, when we spend money, we don't like to spend. I don't like to spend it. I don't like to spend my money. I don't like to spend your money. But we have to, and we can still do that conservatively and responsibly. We, in a budget situation, have two aspects of the budget. One is revenue, and the other is expense. And we tend to look at the expense side only. And realistically, we also have a revenue side. And I'm going to take a moment. Mr. Thompson had put together some information on special education aid, and I'm going to talk a little bit about revenue right now, and I'm going to start with adequacy aid. You can see that the adequacy aid is provided by the state in a base amount. There are some additional factors that will allow for additional aid. Students with special needs, English language learners, free and reduced eligibility. So those are very important factors in helping us continue to receive as much as we can from the state in adequacy aid. There's a special education factor that goes into the calculation as well. And so you can see for us, for 23-24, our adequacy was at $2.8 million. In 24-25, it's at $3.234 million. And for the current year, it's projected at $3.284 million. So you'll note that that's only really about $50,000 difference from the state from 2024-25 to the current year 25-26. You'll see the next category over is SWEP. That's a statewide education property tax. That's a component of everyone's tax bill. And that really is the state just turning around and saying, we're going to meet our obligation to educate students in the state of New Hampshire by having a local tax bill line just for that. And so they collect that money, the state collects that money, and it ends up going to the town and then cycles through to the school district. So realistically speaking, the adequacy aid is really what we receive from the state. The SWEP is what you're all paying in the first place. So from looking at the adequacy amounts that we've had come in, we've had some fluctuations. You can see that we've, in 23-24, we were down almost 11% compared to the prior year. 24-25, we're actually up 11%. 25-26, we're up 1.5%. So really, we're not necessarily tracking and trailing state aid to the level of increase that we're seeing in our budgets, especially for special education. But we're going to talk about that in a moment. So what I would say is that if you have an opportunity to have the discussion with any of your state reps or anyone up in Congress, anyone up in Concord, these are great factors to bring up with them as to what we're getting for adequacy aid. I'll point out, though, it's not all doom and gloom, I know. I'm very, very pleased to show, and Superintendent Thompson had put this together. This is a record of our special education aid. I'm going to go through this real quick. Our districts receive special education aid to offset those extraordinary education costs that exceed 3.5 times the average state per student pupil cost. So the legislature allocates, let's say, $35 million, and so we submit our expenses that exceed 3.5 times of the average state cost per pupil. We track those costs and we submit those to the state, and we're entitled to reimbursement. However, they only appropriate a certain amount. The pot's only so big, I think is what they say. So this year, they've actually increased that appropriation quite a bit. And so you can see in previous years, 22-23, we had received $610,000 on a claim of $622,000. So we were almost at 98%. 23-24, that number fell to $514,737, which represented 66% of our eligible amount. The current year, you're seeing $961,000. So we really have a really big pickup in that area. And that's currently showing a proration of 90% of what our claim would be for $1,068,000. So the state has funded this line, this area, and is helping us to meet a very expensive area in our budget. So again, when we have those very, very high cost pupils and those high cost programs, we are able to request that reimbursement from the state, and you can see that we've been able to receive quite a bit more. We've done a much better job tracking our expenses and our costs. There's a tremendous process that goes up to that eligible amount. You have to submit quite a bit more in some cases. The state will look at a student's IEP and see if the services that we're submitting for billing, for reimbursement, are part of that IEP. It gets down to that level of detail. So it does take some resources on our end to make sure that we can continue to maximize our ability to be reimbursed by the state. I think Hempstead has taken a pretty professional approach with our staffing, with our ability to, on the business office end, to be able to have the resources to go after as much money as we can from the state. And this year, that's, over $450,000 more. So that's a great pickup, I think, for us.
So in theory, to kind of make sense of all of that, having $450,000 more dollars come from state aid should, in theory, reduce the amount needed in property taxes to fund special education.
That's right. That's right, to fund our budget generally, so.
And 2 years ago, if we had gotten the reimbursement we got 2 years ago, last year, we would have gotten $230,000 more, and that wasn't expected by anyone. That was kind of dropped on us at the last minute, and then we just had to eat the $230,000, right?
Right, we weren't expecting the reimbursement rate to be as low as it was. That was a very busy year. There were a lot of claims submitted. I think having seen that, my speculation, wild speculation on my part would be that the legislature saw that more districts were submitting, that expenses were rising, more districts were submitting, and they did increase that appropriation so that we in turn can receive more of that back. And you can see based on the numbers that we've been able to submit, 622,000 from a couple of years ago, 780,000 last year, $1 million in 24-25. And I'll say this year, we're receiving, well, theoretically we'll receive 961,000. It might be a little bit less. They do some final adjustments, but it still might be something that we can get close to. That amount is significantly higher in a lot of regards. So we've been able to track those costs much better, been able to get that amount as close as we can. And in previous years, a lot of other districts, I think in last year, 23-24, I think a lot of other districts had submitted expenses as well, and the appropriation just hadn't changed. So it has now. So that's that. As far as Health Trust goes, we are, for our increase this year, which is kind of where I started before I went off the path, we're squarely, I believe, in the middle. Some districts or some members of Health Trust have had a negative, I think up to negative 4% as their increase. Others have been as high as 35%. So we're in that 7 to 10% range, which is a pretty good place to be. Still about a $400,000 impact on our budget. One other thing that Health Trust has done, which has been tremendously helpful for us, is to allow for our retirees, if they'd like to participate in a Medicare supplemental plan. Up until last year, that Medicare supplement was, I believe, $860 per month. They've taken a new approach or a new view. They've worked with Anthem to get into a Medicare Advantage plan, which last year or in the current year is about $450 per month. So they've done a lot both on our end, on the school district end, and on the retiree end. They've also allowed the retirees who are on those Medicare supplement plans now go into their own risk pool and are not part of our risk pool, which I think will help with our rates as well. So that's some updates on our budget from Health Trust perspective, and the concerns that I heard prior to the start of the meeting, I think it's very, very legitimate. It seems like you've opened up the newspaper or you go online and another school district is waving the flag, and I don't think that we'll be one of those districts anytime soon. Again, responsible budgeting, responsible spending, monitoring what we spend, having an active board who's able to review all of our expenses, it really helps, I think, to keep us in check.
So Jeff, for the health insurance, last year, what was the percentage increase, and then what are we ballparking this year?
This year it's between 7 and 10. Last year it was a little less than that, I believe.
Okay.
Years have run together for me.
So it's still a significant increase, and also in comparison to last year.
Not the 22% that we experienced
2 years
the year
ago,
before,
yeah, which was
but
ginormous.
Again, if that's what it is, and you have a flurry of claims before, right after COVID that weren't planned for, and that's what the rate is. That's what the rate is. Bear in mind, the year before that, Health Trust had so much reserve that they sent money back to us, and so if they don't need the reserve, they will send it back. And this was a situation that we got the money back in 1 year, and then we had to deal with it almost 2 budget cycles later in terms of what we needed to do to make it.
Yeah, and I know some of that had to do with the fact that a lot of teachers were getting ready for retirement, and they wanted to get surgeries done and things like that before they retired, which was part of the significant increase around that time period. And then on the special education thing, somebody pointed out to me, but didn't want to say it, was we had actually written a letter to the state representative, state senator, the governor, and the executive counselor that the special education fund not being funded fully was severely impacting us as well as other people. So I don't know whether that had something to do with it or not, but we did take action.
Well, and it paid off because, Governor Ayotte's budget had $16 million additional funding for special education aid. And I would just like to point out, and I'm not trying to rain on a parade, this has some very short-term, like, great news for us, right? Look at the increase that we're getting, that 961 compared to the 514, right? $450,000. But then go over to what we submitted for, right? We submitted for over $1 million this year. And that is a $350,000 increase from the year before. That just demonstrates the rate of increase in special education. And again, what keeps us up at night is this forecasting. All of this, our budget, whether it's revenue or expenses, it's just forecasting, right? Like, what do we think we're going to spend? It's really hard to forecast revenue in the future based upon the tremendous amount of variability you see here. So, last year we got 66%. This year we got 90%. This is so unpredictable. And the expenses we're talking about real students. When we add up their program, it's more than 3.5 times the state average. That number is about $70,000. So when we have a program that is over $70,000, we get reimbursed for that program. So we need to be able to determine which students will be in our district when we're forecasting, how many we will have, how many will be over cap, then also how much money will be in that special education fund, and then what the proration will be based upon how many other districts are submitting for reimbursement. Like, this is an incredibly challenging thing to try to forecast for budgeting.
And then you can't even account for when a student comes in mid-year or unexpectedly that qualifies for an out-of-district placement that is $200,000 or $75,000 or something like that. And that's
I mean, the district that I currently work in, we got a student mid-year who had a $400,000 residential placement in upstate New York that the district became on the hook for overnight.
So that's the argument for putting the special education trust before the voters. I think too, though, something that will help long-term is as we focus more on MTSS and early identification. In theory, that should help so that students don't end up in special ed programs later, because our special ed spending is somewhat significantly higher than some of the surrounding towns. So that's something we need to work on.
Great point.
I guess this might be a good time also to talk about federal changes and federal funding we're losing out on now. And how that's
Yep,
gonna impact our budget.
I was just going to kind of ask that question, and Bob or Jeff or anyone is welcome to say no comment, but my curiosity question is, with the recent reduction in state special ed employees, does that impact the ability to even assess aid qualification for us and other districts?
So with special education aid, that money is from the state of New Hampshire. Those are not federal dollars. Our federal dollars come from IDEA, and we received last year, I think, approximately $380,000, Melissa, in the ballpark, right? So when we're talking about the potential of missing out on federal funds, we're talking about that 380. Now, don't get me wrong, it's a lot of money, and those are real dollars that we use for unanticipated special education expense. So we're able to fund the HCS coordinator position because it didn't pass in the budget. How long we can continue to do that is always the question. And so to get to your question, last Wednesday, I asked the Commissioner of Education that session about, and this was prior to the special education announcement, and her comment to me was, we are at the state Department of Ed, they are finding out at the same exact time the general public is finding out through the news media and social media. Wow. And so what's happening is our state partners have to go to our partners to try to get answers, and knowing that these departments are seriously understaffed or not staffed at all, we're not getting answers. So, I think that's why we safely are saying Title I, Title IV, we've gotten some indication they're gone. we have some faith in special education and Title I funds because they are codified federal law and were approved by the Congress and signed by the President. So they're actual law of the land. But we do have to plan for it. There is a level of uncertainty, and I have all of the same answers that anyone else has. In fact, Missy, when you reached out, I learned about that same day through a story that I heard on the radio.
So IDEA, the employees at office have been let go. So next budget cycle comes, there may be a problem with people being able to certify and approve the grants and then disperse them.
Yeah, so we are in a good place for this year because the federal funds that were approved for this school year have been dispersed to states. We received a half allocation from the state. There was money sitting in their coffers to provide us the second half of that funding. But to look ahead, that's an issue. Now, again, a lot of what we fund in IDEA are items that are what we would classify as sort of unanticipated.
So basically, if we don't get federal funding, we're going to be on the hook for around $380,000 more than when we did this previous year.
More or less, yeah.
Okay.
I know you had a postponement of the public comment. I don't know if there were any public
Yes.
comments.
So at this point, I will open it up for public comment if anyone would like to come up and speak.
Come on up.
You are welcome. If you could please state your name and your address. Your full name and your address, please. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Diana Thunder. I'm at 87 Main Street, Hampstead. I'm nervous. First, I just want to say how much I respect that, the time that you guys give. So I have a lot of educators in my family. So my first question, the Education Freedom Account, I would assume, does anybody know how many people in Hempstead took that?
I will defer to the board chair whether you would like, I do have an answer to that question. Would you like me to answer it during
Yes,
public
please.
comment? Okay. Yeah, we presently have, the last time I checked this number was a couple weeks ago, we have 20.
Just one?
20.
Oh, 20. So,
We do not know which of those students have actually attended Hampstead schools. That number 20 just represents families that reside in Hampstead.
I think it's a great program, and I would think that other people will probably jump on board with that. So, assuming that they do, wouldn't that just naturally create a reduction in the budget and staffing? I mean, I know 20 doesn't seem like a big number, but I'm just thinking that's still 20 less kids in our district, right?
So you would have to have enough people leave the district so that you could shrink a grade level. So for example, if you have 4 teachers at a grade level, you would have, and you have 4 teachers per grade per like cohort of students. So you'd have to have it shrink so much that you could get rid of an entire cohort of teachers. Like you need 4 teachers per grade level to teach middle school. You need 4 teachers in elementary school. You'd have to have like 20 people go out all in that same grade level in order to be able to shrink it down.
Yeah, I get
And
that.
the problem too, a couple people here and there don't help that much because you're still looking at the overhead. You still have to pay for all the buses. You still have to pay for all the stuff to run the building. If significant amount that move out, that would help possibly in the long run. But you're also talking about locked in contracts when we're paying on a 3-year contract and stuff like that. So you would see some savings, but you're not going to see significant savings without a really significant amount of people moving out into the freedom accounts. So.
I get the in and out thing. That just makes, this is just a curiosity question. Have the special ed costs ever gone down? That are. So to your point about people going in, I'm genuinely curious about that. I know that everybody's concerned with special ed because has to be the single. The last I think it was last year, they said the percentage of children instead that were considered special ed was around 23%. Is that correct? Because that's the question. And I think everyone here, that would be a shocking number.
Sorry, when I said no, I was responding to the amount of money special ed costs, not necessarily the percentage of students who are identified.
Okay, can you help me understand that then?
About the amount of money.
Well, so it seems weird. So let's say you had 40 kids in 2018, and now you've got 30. Because, I mean, what are the odds that you're going to keep 40?
So a small group of kids, but the cost is increasing.
Is it because you're getting more teachers, you're paying? Like, I would just love to, I'm not going to monopolize the meeting. I'll ask that after. That was just genuinely curious when I looked at that number. I thought, gee, you would think that there would be a year where, like, we just happened to have less kids in the school system that were under special ed. But again, I don't monopolize the meeting, so thank you.
Yeah, how I would apply that is not all kids are created equal in the sense of one child may qualify for, again, out-of-district services that are $400,000 that moves into the district, even though we lost, we graduated 5 kids that aged out. That
One avoider is we're over minutes, so we have to defer somebody else to make comment before we go back to her.
So I can't say anything else?
No, we just have to offer somebody else, and then we can allow you
I
to
can come back?
Yeah. if
Okay,
that makes
I just
sense.
had one more thing.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Would anyone else like to come up and speak? Okay.
Could I make a suggestion that we let her finish her public comment, take whatever questions? You know, we haven't moved on from the budget discussion, so we want to, allow her to ask all of her questions, and then we can engage in a conversation if the board would like to. Just that way we can kind of eliminate some of the sort of back and forth. That would just be my recommendation.
Okay, I'm more, and again, I come from a big family of educators, so I am asking this in the most respectful way possible. As far as health insurance and insurances in general, everybody nationwide, probably worldwide, is affected by that. It's gross and it's problematic for everybody. I'm just curious, what is the ratio that teachers are paying for their health care? Is it 5%?
No, they're paying 12% now. In the last contract, they were actually paying 10, and as of the last contract negotiation, we negotiated, so they're paying 12% now.
So they're paying, so 8% of their health insurance is covered by the taxpayers?
Correct.
Okay, that's, in my world, again, we have a small business, but I think that's really generous. And again, no disrespect to what you do, because thank God we have great teachers. But I'm just wondering, has it ever, crossed anybody's mind to me, instead of transferring that cost automatically onto the taxpayers, to perhaps consider letting the teachers perhaps pay 80% of their health insurance? And again, I mean that respectfully. I don't mean to.
So that was a part of contract negotiations, were for them to share the burden. Also, when the what was the increase, Jeff? 17%?
20.
Oh, 22. They paid more. They paid a larger percentage of the increase because of the way the contract language was. If you look at comparative districts in the area, most districts in the surrounding area pay 90%. So we're actually they pay more of a percentage than other surrounding districts comparatively. And that's, when you're looking at a labor force, especially because the amount of teachers is shrinking, you have to be competitive with those. But they still, in the last negotiation, agreed to pay more.
I just think that if when you guys are looking at budget items, a new van, and again, know anything about anything, if it were like your home personal budget, you might have to look at, gee, I keep my health insurance or buy a new van. And I would just hope that you guys respect the taxpayers enough to have that sort of mentality and say, do we want to have to pay, 8% more toward our health coverage, or do we want a new van? And again, I say that in the most respectful way. That's all. Thank you for your time very much.
We can just clarify record on one thing. We do have a plan, do provide 95% contribution. It's a low-cost plan, and that's to encourage people to take that plan so that we can all benefit from a lower premium.
That's our deductible plan, so that they,
Correct.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's also worth mentioning that the contracts that we negotiate with the various units in the district, those are also voted on in the spring, in addition to the budget. So past year, we had negotiated 2 units, including teachers, and both of those were voted on and passed by the taxpayers, but at the same time, our budget failed. The issue with that is when we're creating our budget, we take these, these increases for the various bargaining units into account for those. So if those contracts pass, but the budget fails, we still have to pay for those contracts. So we have to eliminate other things in the budget to make that work. So it's important that everybody, look at those contracts and look at the budget and make sure that the two work together.
I don't know if the board has any other comments or feedback. Again, what's similar to last year is some of the items we talked about, I'll put into a draft document for the board to be able to provide feedback. And again, for the folks in the audience, it's the role of the school administration to provide a proposed budget for the board. The board will ask us to take another look. They'll ask us about the priorities, that those numbers could change. Then we get to a point where the board will adopt that budget. Then the board brings that budget to the public as part of the public hearing to get feedback, and then that goes on the warrant. So really what we're talking about now is just the recommended budget. And I don't know if there's any items to discuss now, if there are other questions that may come up about special education and what's driving the cost, because special education costs continue to increase. What we're seeing is a lot of increase in our school district of efficiency. So we don't want to let our guard down to think that, well, look at we level funded this year in special ed. That is through a hard work. It's not through the fact that special educations are rising. We see that in out-of-district placements. So the state cap of 5% for a special education school can raise their percentage by 5%. But what schools are doing now is they're offering less service so that they can stay within their 5% cap. So now we have to pay for contracted services such as BCBAs, school psychologists. These are expenses that districts never paid for before. You're also seeing increases in transportation. That includes monitors, health professionals, and some of that it's supply and demand. When many people who want to drive professionally can go work at Amazon, they can make more money, they can be employed year-round, and it is much, in some ways, it's a little bit easier of a job than transporting children. So some of this is driven by supply and demand as well.
So I think too, the contractor thing is something that's especially cost, because some of these people like school psych and stuff like that, where they can make $60,000 here, or they can make $120,000 as a contractor. We don't have a hope of actually retaining them in district unless they literally want to do public service for us. I would encourage you guys, though, next week, I know this is like a board meeting, the work session is where we actually sit and talk and go through stuff and have conversations, and it's more of a back and forth. You'll probably get more out of that.
Detail.
Yeah.
So.
And then just the other piece, just for the boards and the community's information, the previous agreement, and thank you, Dr. Poor, for pointing out, that agreement was approved by the voters. Our HEA staff members made significant concessions. They picked up additional cost sharing. They also sunsetted a provision in the contract around retirement health care. And I can tell you that was painful for our teachers. They're the first of their contract, many of them, biking up that additional healthcare cost, received no increase at all. And so, we're living in a world where the health benefits decreasing, and we had a year where had to, because of the significant increase, some did not get any at all.
Just to clarify, they got an increase, but the increase in healthcare made it so
It was an offset.
Yeah.
It was an offset. So I appreciate their willingness to work with us on that.
Yeah, lastly, I'll just kind of reiterate, because I speak for Rich, but he brought it up as a priority, and I think it rents, a feedback from going into this upcoming budget session. We would really benefit from being able to see the salary and benefit numbers to have some sort of baseline when assessing the amount of Band-Aids and crayons and supplies that are needed, because that weighs heavily and factors into the decision-making on what our priorities are and what is available.
Absolutely. Yep.
So. Any other?
What you're saying, let me just clarify. What you're saying is what costs are locked in versus what costs can we actually change?
That's correct.
Yeah, like what percentage it is. Yeah, I think that would be beneficial as well.
Yeah.
Like what is our salary and benefit obligation? And then we can make a more informed decision on these items.
Because like 85, 90% of it's pretty much locked in.
Right.
Yeah.
And we can absolutely do that. And, just so you're aware, the reason why we've kind of staggered it with the department budgets is because there's a lot of uncertainty. This is the time of the year where people start to think about retirement, but we often don't get that notice until later in the year. The major impact on budgeting when you look at hiring a newer teacher versus a veteran teacher. And then also the other thing that is significant too is track movement. There's a lot of people that want to advance coursework. And so there's a level of variability in presenting the information early, which we will do because the board has requested. But we appreciate the grace that you give us when we have to adjust that number in November or December because of just staff movement. So, because that occurs.
All right, moving on, outreach for school budget and funding education. So some of you may remember on the September 23rd meeting, we brought up the topic of the New Hampshire Fair Funding Project potentially doing education sessions where we are making it a priority as a board to educate the community on our priorities and the budget creation process, and really educating people on what we just saw with state aid and federal aid and how that factors in. The New Hampshire Fair Funding Project has a lot of those tools and videos and documents and pamphlets ready to go. So I kind of gave the directive to Bob to explore further, and I'll let him give an update on where we stand.
Yeah, it's not much of a substantive update. I have reached out to them, looking at a tentative date right now of December 9th, and that's really just based upon our calendar. I think it would be good to have that meeting at 6 o'clock, and then we can, in the board meeting where we could provide a synopsis to people. I'd also like to live stream it and do that. We want to have this space. And I'll be just transparent. The December timeframe, I think, is a good one because we know when tax bills go out, you as a board hear from your constituents, and we would believe that any presentation would help to just shed some light on some of the funding issues that we're dealing with. So more to come on that.
Great, thanks, Bob. Moving on to Communications Committee planning.
Put that. I will get started, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to I'm going to turn it over to our two board members who are part of our communications planning committee, so to speak. The issue of communication has come up. It's an ongoing thing, and I heard me say before, I don't think that you can over-communicate. And every year when we enter into the budget season, we have a conversation about we get information out about our budget. And what I appreciate this year is this has been a topic of conversation that have remained on the radar throughout, even after our budget season. And what we're doing here is way early in the process. Generally, what we've done in the past is the board approves the budget, and then we talk about get the information out. So the fact that we're talking about this in tandem in October when we're developing the budget, it tells me that we're going to have a good product here. And so what you projected on the screen and what you have in your packets may not be a new document. Some of you may recall seeing this before. So if we look up a few years ago when we had the Hampstead Central School Committee, we had a member of that committee who has a lot of experience in communication, public relations, and they helped to draft this communication plan. And so we have the benefit of taking that plan, not reinventing the wheel, sort of providing a draft of what that could look like when it's not a bill project, but it's an operating budget and the associated warrant articles. And what's even, we have even more of the benefit of that individual, that committee member served on that committee is now on our board. And Denise, this is the vision of Denise. So Denise and Missy and I met 2 weeks ago. And so what we present to you is a little bit of a draft plan that kind of spells out all of the different sort of funds from press releases. So last year the board did a release on special education aid that was clearly successful. Social media campaigns, online media print, that's somewhat of the media print's a dying industry, but we have very good relationships with Boston Globe now and Eagle Tribune as well. Different events. We talked about New Hampshire funding fairness. There's in January, there's the civic meet and greet at the library we can really capitalize on. We have incoming kindergarten parent night. Videos, Andy did a video last year, it was very successful. I believe it was trending for a time on some media. Creating those shorts, those informational videos, I think is helpful. Utilizing our website, visiting community groups, and then also, there's a very small amount of funds that the board can use direct mailing to be able to get out information about voting and warrant articles. So this sort of threw this together, welcome people's thoughts. My thought is, since the activities begin in December, this might be a document that we could refine further. We had talked about meeting on having the communications group be sort of a standing meeting, and then perhaps even bringing a few folks into the fray to help with communications. Want this to be a committee of dozens, but maybe a few people that take a lot of they have a passion for this subject is something that we're thinking about doing as well. So I don't know, Denise or Missy, is there anything you want to add about the document?
Is working properly. There we go. Not close enough. Just a few adjustments to what you see there. So there are some items that are coming back in print. So the Carriage Town, for those who haven't heard, is coming back as a monthly. That was something that was gone for about a year or so. I think the first issue comes out around November 13th. So that will be just another communication vehicle that people are looking forward to, the return of. I would say certainly doing things on YouTube, TikTok, for those who are looking at that, has become kind of a search engine of sorts, so alongside YouTube. So some of that video content is more portable for certain segments of the population, but print, I think, is going to be a big deal. I just want to underscore anything on the website. So I think probably just need to look collectively at some of the navigation and the ease of finding the information, not just making sure that the information is updated, but making sure that it's quickly accessible, because I think that's been a little bit of a barrier in the past. So just as that's going to be home base, so all of these communication pieces ultimately are going to lead there. So there's probably going to be a fair amount of work that needs into building that up.
I think we had actually gone to a conference, Missy and Bob and I, and one of the things, actually, and Jeff too, the school board, Guilford, got everything passed through, and one of the ways they did it is they did short 1-minute videos where different school board members, were proactive into the community, and they were creative and fun, which they actually had a communications person that helped them out with that to make them spiffy. I don't know how else to say it. And I really do think the way that some people are consuming information, I think that is something we absolutely need to get into, to create some sort of online presence and make it more digestible than a document or a website, so that, when we put it out onto Facebook, people click on it, they look at it for a minute, and then there's an additional link underneath that they can look at, or a person that they can talk to afterwards, that makes it more accessible in a short amount of time, because people's attention spans have lowered.
Fully agree.
Yeah, and that's part of what we talked about doing too, right? So TikTok or any of those like snackable pieces of content that are like 30, 60 seconds in length, those go across platform. So whether they're showing up on Facebook Reels, on TikTok, on Instagram stories, that's the kind of portable stuff that really, I think, makes a difference.
And we have the tool through ThrillShare to be able to post to Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I think the board has heard me say before, communication at this level it can be difficult, and I think of in either of our schools, we have, we're responding to, say, crisis situations, the communication with social media becomes like an add-on to somebody who already has a full-time job. And so the idea of, back last year when Annie made that video, great. I think many hands make light work, right? We have the opportunity to identify what they're trying to send out, which is the second part, is the other side document. What are our goals around communicating, and then what's the process by which we do it? The other resource that we have is Julia Mitchell, who's the communications director at Pinkerton, has offered to with us, and that could be somebody that bring to a future meeting just to run some ideas, because Pinkerton does just an amazing job. I mean, with tonight, right? With a lot of their communications. Now, with them, they also use a lot of students in the development of some of their content, and we could do that to a certain extent, but that's certainly a resource that we could utilize.
Just flipping over back side here. This is all in line, I would expect. I guess my question would be to Denise or Missy, are you confident about the timeline for communication as far as it's starting in December? Any reservations, or we feel good about that? Okay. 'Cause I agree. I want it to be consistent in that we don't do one communication and go away for 3 months and not do anything, and then you also want it to be close to the March timeframe, and targeted, I guess, during that time, just to really have it stick in people's minds as they go into voting day. Board members, any other questions or comments around these goals? All right. I'll just say I'm encouraged with the work that's been done so far. I think it's a great start. And like Bob said, if we can utilize our resources, whether that's board members or students, or lean on people in the community and utilize their skill sets, I think that's great. All right, moving on to the second read of our policies. FF is the naming of school buildings and other facilities. Again, these are for second read. JICJ is unauthorized communication devices, basically the cell phone policy here. So go ahead and look those over. And Bob, nothing has changed in these policies between first reading and second reading, correct?
There have been no changes, and, we've made, I think, a reasonable attempt to solicit feedback around cell phones from staff and community, and to date, we haven't really received anything substantive.
Okay.
And then, again, this has really been codified in our procedures all along.
Sure.
It's not to say that we don't run into issues, but affirming this policy tonight, I think is the right move.
I just keep hearing kids say that they are actually happy with the fact that they do not have to have that looming over them over the course of the day. And then for the community, there is a part of this policy that allows for specialized educational purposes for specific students. They could be able to use it. For example, like one of them is if a student has an insulin pump, they can still use their phone and stuff like that. But I would like to move. Wait.
Can I just make one other comment? Because I want to make sure I'm not being disingenuous. I did receive some critical feedback about the cell phone policy. I was able to attend the Camp Lincoln field trip.
Yeah.
And I grew the buses as students were getting off in the morning, and some of the chaperones said really loud on the bus.
No
Kids
one
had to
was
talk
looking at
to
their
each other
phones.
as
Yeah.
opposed to their devices. So I want to misrepresent. I didn't receive any feedback. I did. So
I'm pleased to hear there was increased human interaction.
yeah.
I would like to move to approve policies FF and JICJ.
Any further questions or discussion? All approved. Thank you. All right, moving on to board comments and correspondence. Board members, anything to share? Some of you were busy at cool conferences last week.
Very interesting. We attended the Kidder Law Conference and got updates on bills. The one stressing me out is about warrant articles and the things that we have to include, and that will be a change for this year, with no clear guidance on how we're really putting the info on
Yeah.
the warrant articles
Slowly
coming.
into focus, but that really needs our attention.
I do have full faith that the professional organizations that Bob and Jeff belong to will help to make sure that we're on the same page as everybody else. So even if we get it wrong, we'll be wrong with everybody else, which is the way to go.
The DEI lawsuit that's going on about I'm trying to remember, the signing of, it was a New Hampshire bill for doing away with DEI, but it was left very unspecific and left special ed and 504s kind of open, but that's not happening right now.
It is, yeah. So the certification that superintendents were required to make is there's a permanent injunction for any school district represented by the NEA, which represents most of the school districts
But might
in
come
New
back.
Hampshire, including us. Could come back.
Could come back.
Yeah, so what does that mean, the permanent injunction?
So so I think there's still it's a to be continued story, but the actual certification of that superintendents had to sign off on saying that we would not engage in DEI assessments. There was a list of different things has been thrown out because there's ambiguity.
Right.
And so there's still, more to come in terms of that.
Okay.
So
Just wasn't well written.
the court case is still open,
It is
and there's an injunction until the court case is resolved.
resolved, yeah.
So we will have to wait until the court case is resolved before we make any decisions as a board on it.
Yeah, the reason why I use permanent, that may not be the word, is that there was an initial injunction that had an expiration date.
Yeah.
And then this one is extended until there is a resolution of the case.
Got it.
And I think if, similar to divisive concepts, because this is a sort of in the same line, same concern, some of the law is pretty ambiguous and can be interpreted different ways, and that's obviously not good to have in law, regardless of what the content is. And so I think that this may go along the same lines as that law did as well. So that's what we're hoping.
The only other thing I learned was the parental bill of rights doesn't apply to Pinkerton because it's a semi-private school, right? That was, wrapped it all up.
But parts of the parental bill of rights do apply to Pinkerton because they're codified in law.
They are, yeah.
But not specifically the full parental bill of rights. Most of the parental bill of rights was already codified in law and is now in one place to make it easier for everybody to be able to access it.
Which you just reminded me, the parental bill of rights also doesn't apply to students that are 18 to 22.
Yes, that is true. Because once they reach their majority, they are not.
And next week we have our monthly policy committee meeting, and parental bill of rights is front and center. And so we'll get that policy well on its way and make sure that we are in full compliance. And as Dr. Hubner already pointed out, the items that are contained in there are already memorialized in the law. That won't be a heavy lift for us. It's more about the notification to families. So.
On a brighter note, I got to be the DJ and MC for the Play for the Cure event here at the middle school. As always, this was my second year doing it. It's always awesome to see the sea of pink shirts. I also attended the pep rally, which was extremely loud because kids were so excited. So it was great to see all the sports teams do their choreographed dances. Great to see all the sports teams play throughout the day. So thank you to the Hampstead Middle School Athletic Club for inviting me, and I just think it's a great event for a great cause. So let's keep the tradition as long as we can. All right. Moving on to personnel report.
Yes, there's no personnel report, but under the superintendent report, as I indicated, I was able to attend the grade 6 Camp Lincoln field trip along with Mr. Down. Just such a great day. This is sort of, I think, like the precursor. This is like grade 6 version of what will become Nature's Class. And they, participate in low ropes challenges, team building activities. There's kayaking. We have pretty much full use of the facility. It was a tremendous day. The weather was amazing. To watch the kids supporting one another in the team building activities, pushing their own personal limits. It really was interesting to hear how many students had never been in a kayak before, and how proud they were that they didn't tip over and land in the water, for those that didn't land in the water. So thank you to Nancy Benson and the 6th grade team for organizing that trip. It takes a lot of effort. Also just wanted out, as Andy had mentioned, Play for the Cure was a resounding success as every year. Right now we believe we raised around $5,500. That number will fluctuate. This is also the 13th of the program, and we've raised approximately $40,000. This is something that Nancy Benson brought with her when she came to the middle school. And this really, we're able to execute on this because of all of the hard work of the Hampstead Athletic Club. And it was absolutely great to see our school board chair not only sort of emceeing the event, but all decked out in pin. In fact, I didn't even recognize you when I saw you. You did a nice job integrating. Last Friday was our professional learning day for staff. The focus of that was update curriculum guides. Again, we talked a little bit about the Parental Bill of Rights, which provides access for families to our curriculum. We're up there, it's accessible, but what we want to do is ensure they are up to date, because our curriculum evolves and changes. We're also making sure that they align with the changes in Ed 306, which are the regulations that support instruction. They also were able to engage in a variety of other activities. They were exploring new AI tools, and then received training on a variety of tools. Implemented a number of new curriculum areas this year. Lastly, I just wanted to talk about some exciting news here at the middle school. Space is always an issue. It has been. It's probably one of the prevailing issues in our district. And I was happy to report to the board, or I'm sorry, the board is aware, to report to the community that we are planning to move our student service office, which our school district offices are located here, into our existing office at 20 Mary E. Clark Drive. We're able to pick up a small amount of extra space in the form of 2 office spaces and a conference. So that has obvious benefit for the district, but most importantly, and the driver of this decision was that frees up a tremendous amount of space for a vision that he has of a school counseling suite. So now our students that need to receive school counseling can go to a suite. Really what that does is it enhances privacy. Our school counseling offices right now are both windowless rooms, so they'll get a window, and they're also just a little bit off the beaten path. So if a student is in crisis or a student needs to connect to make an appointment, they can do that with privacy and dignity that's been sort of a challenge because we've had to house that district office here. What it also does, you've heard us talk about the therapy dogs, is it actually gives space for the dogs to have room. And I know in talking with Mr. Dowd, who's been working with the middle school staff, we really want to make that a very flexible, student-friendly space, place where people can go where they feel safe, maybe have a more aesthetic feel to it and less of a school industrial feel. So really supports the work that Mrs. Bernard is doing, staff is doing here, and supporting MTSSB, and it gives our counselors the space that they deserve and that most other schools have. And so I don't know if there's any question about any items in the superintendent report or anything else that you would like me to discuss.
Good. Okay. Don't have anything. All right. Board members, anything else to share? At this point, we will adjourn the meeting at 9:13 p.m. Thank you.